I welcome all of you, and let me invite Professor Ake Tangsupvattana, the Dean of the Faculty of Political Science, to give opening remarks. But there's been a slight change in that Professor Sujit Bunbongkan, who has been twice the Dean of the Faculty, also a Constitution drafter in the past, he's unwell today. He's come down with a flu, unable to attend. So we are very resourceful and talented at this faculty. We have a lot of experts. Professor Ake, in addition to giving us opening remarks for the forum, he also will be a speaker. So he will speak opening remarks right into his own remarks about constitutionalism in Thailand. And then after that, I'll introduce the other two speakers. Professor Ake, Ajahn Ake, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
A warm welcome and good morning to all of you. It is my pleasure to open today's ISIS public forum on the draft constitution and referendum. Let me thank to Frederick Naumann Stiftung and Sisfield Herzog for their partnership and support. I also want to note a slight change in the program. As Ajahn Thitinan mentioned, Professor Sujit Bunbongkan is unable to join today because he got a flu. And as a result, Ajahn Thitinan has asked me to fill in from a broader perspective of Thai politics and Thailand's constitutionalism. And so I will try my best to, within a short notice, maybe try to address some question to the panel. As the title suggests, today we are interested in looking at the main principles, the stakes involved, and the direction of the ongoing constitution drafting process. This draft is the second attempt to come up with a new constitution after the change of the government in May 2014. The constitution is essentially the supreme law of the land, as we have already known. And thus, everyone here has an inherent interest to learn about it in different ways. This is why we are organizing this forum today. It is intended to promote public discussion and exchanges of views of the ongoing constitution drafting process. We are here to be exploratory and constructive, open to input and feedback from the public for the charter drafting process. To what extent will the constitution drafting process strike a workable balance between popular representation and institutional checks and balances? What are the prospects of the referendum, and what is timetable to promulgate the new charter and organize new polls for the return of democratic rule? Of course, the speakers are not meant to have all of the answers. I sincerely thanks to His Excellency Norachit Sinhaseni, the Speaker of the CDC, and Professor Siripan Nogsuan Sawasdee for sharing their time and expertise with us.
Let me just invite Ajahn Ake to give us a broader perspective of constitutionalism in Thailand. We've had 19 constitutions since 1932. This is number 20th that we're trying to come up with. And on average, there's been a constitution every 4.3 years, which is pretty frequent for constitutionalism. Now, this draft is a second attempt since May 2014, change of government. We are interested in seeing a broader picture from 97 Constitution to 2007 Constitution and now to 2016. In the context of Thai politics, we're seeing a return to semi-democratic rule? Are we seeing the kind of constitutional design that shifts power from certain institutions to other institutions? Who has power in Thailand? How do we locate power in Thai politics? And what does this constitution have in mind? What are the intentions for power configuration in Thailand? Ajahn Ek, could you give us a little bit of a broad contours in your view, based on your expertise, looking after studying Thai politics over the last more than 25 years?
Since I got quite a short notice, I will employ my trick a little bit instead of discussing in the details of the content of the constitution or something like that. I would like to address maybe some 3 or 4 questions to the panel. The first one is going to be the question at the level of socio-political context. Since I think as Ajahn Thitinan have already mentioned, we got around 20 constitution already now. But when we talk about constitution, we mention to political structure, and what we are going to have to think more is how can we use this political structure to force political behavior of the people. There are 2 relations between this one. The relation between the political structure and political behavior. I think in the past, the Thai constitutional drafter tried to think about the political structure and use this to force political behavior of the Thai people in the past. And we saw that it failed many times. But for this one, with respect to my argument here, how it can be achieved. Maybe at the end, it's going to link to the question how can political structure link to political culture in Thailand. If the political culture in Thailand go to one way and political structure go to the other way, how can we bridge between this one by using political structure to to force the behavior of the people? If it cannot, the gap between de jure or what written in laws and de facto or the real political behavior of the people is going to be widened. If this constitution is successful in doing this, it may be close the gap between this one and it will make a Thai politics develop more. This is my first question. The second one is about the level of political regime change. As Ajahn Thitinan have already mentioned that in the past, since 1932, when we changed political regime from absolute monarchy to constitutional monarchy, instead of getting democracy, Thailand was ruled since 1932 to around 1973 by authoritarian regime. After 1973 till 1976, and after that, we established what we call semi-democracy in Thailand for about nearly 10 years. And then we got 1997 constitution, which really represent what we can call firm parliamentary politics. We moved forward electoral politics, party politics, and we depart from military authoritarian regime. But today, many reasons that we can explain to political conflict in the past. But today, we got this situation. And I think maybe I may ask one question that what is going to be the direction in the future? We are going to move back to semi-democracy, or this constitution may be, suitable to the context of Thailand today, and then move Thailand beyond political conflict, and maybe look in the positive way, move Thailand to be more democratic society. And the third one is about the level of institutional checks and balances. It seems to me that I read some about the draft of the constitutional draft, and I feel that maybe one of the main purpose of this draft is to confront corruption problem in Thailand. I think this is a really strength of this constitution. We knew that in the past we got a big problem of corruption in Thailand, and this make our development less and less progress. But according to the draft, we saw many independent regulatory bodies, like a constitutional court, like the Senate, and other political bodies. It seemed to me that these independent regulatory bodies got a very strong power to regulate, and maybe to some extent to control the elected government. So I may raise some question that how can we arrange the balance between the representative of the people, the elected government, and the recruited regulatory body. This is going to be the one of the big question, especially if today we got the news in the news that all Senate maybe come from the recruitment, and some make a proposal that maybe Senate should have equal authority as the MP, as the member of the parliament. So how we are going to arrange this relation? And maybe my my last question. Maybe if we have a look at the details of the constitution, and actually I think this question may H.E.Mr.Siripan may be the best person to answer this one. If we look back to 1997 constitution, 2007 constitution, and today the draft of the new constitution, we saw that electoral system changed every time. It changed from SMDP, one man, one vote, plus party list in 1997 constitution to a change system of the mixed system again. And today we will, and according to this new draft, we will have a new system. I would like to address the question here that what is the purpose of the changing of the electoral system? Because as political scientists, we knew that the change of the electoral system will impact to the change of the party system. And if the changing relate to the benefit of the people, that is going to be fine. But if not, what is going to be the situation in the next coming year in Thailand? Last one, I think I got many perceptions, especially maybe from the after the coup d'etat, that this constitution is going to be a part of the reconciliation of the political conflict in Thailand. Also would like to address more question about this, that if this draft enact pass the referendum, can it help to resolve political conflict in Thailand? Because I think we got a very big serious problem of political conflict. Instead of we have the political competition in election, we got a kind of regime of mob rule. I didn't mention to any size, but you can observe that in Thailand, when one political party was defeated in political game, they mobilized the mob into the street against the government. But when it changed turn, it's going to be the same problem. Both sides. How can we escape this trap? If we cannot escape from this trap, I think it's very difficult to Thai politics to be developed in the further step. So maybe only for questions and some of exchange idea at this moment.
I think you also have raised some of the key points that we're interested in investigating further. If you draw a trajectory of Thai democracy from 1932, it's very up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down until the late 60s, 70s. So very easy to frame it. Before 32 to World War II interlude, from 47 to 57 to 73, long period of military dictatorship controlled by two cliques, alternating. From 73 to 76, a democratic interval, elections and a lot of protests, and very violent really. And then a backlash from the established forces, established centers of power in the military in 76. And then very hard right-wing rule until 1980. And then from 1980 to 88, Thailand had a stable, semi-democratic rule. 5 governments, 2 elections, 83, 86, and then 88, so 3 elections, with 1 prime minister from the army, General Prem. And that was a period, many think of it as the glory period for Thai economy, Thai politics, because it was stable, it's something you know what to expect. And at that time, they built the Eastern Seaboard. Many of the successes of the Thai economy, the blueprint was implemented at that time. And in 88, you had the Chai government coming in to power after the election. 88 to 91, corruption, some performance, a lot of corruption. And then 91, 92, coup period. 92, the coup makers were kicked out. 92 to 97, exuberant period of democratic experiment with the new constitution. That was the most popular constitution still to this day, the 1997 constitution. Very organic, grassroots, they had public participation, very inclusive. We had TV programs debating issues that were input into the constitution. I read that constitution many times. Now we have to read a lot of constitutions. So 97 did well, the constitution initially, but then it ran into Thaksin Shinawatra. So 2001 to 2006, democratic, certainly, but with a lot of abuses and so on. So we had the coup in 2006. 06, 07, new constitution, shifting power back away from what was ingrained in 97 constitution, right? So that was the 07, but that wasn't enough to keep the Thaksin parties away. So eventually, his sister found a way to power with the Thai party. So now in 2014, another coup and another attempt to reconfigure the constitution in a way that would regain some semblance of balance and stability for Thailand, for Thai politics. So I want to thank Ajahn Ek very much for, on short notice, giving us a very good contours of what we need to discuss. And our next speaker, you have the flyers or the bios and CVs. I'll just only introduce our next speaker is our main speaker. And, to the monitors, I think I want to say that they should be more open-minded and to allow us to have seminars and forums, because we intend to be constructive. I would not be able to have this seminar today if we didn't have early agreement from former Permanent Secretary, His Excellency Norachit Sinhaseni, who's been very generous and very flexible with his time. So he is now the spokesperson, the main, we have two spokesmen of the Constitution Drafting Commission. This time it's called Commission, CDC. And the other spokesperson is not here, he's a member of the faculty here. So His Excellency Norachit has been in many posts, mainly in the diplomatic corps, rising to be ambassador, the permanent secretary, and now he's been appointed to Council of State, which is the legal advisory body to the government, and taking part as the drafter and spokesman of the Constitution Drafting Commission. They will have a retreat next week in Hua Hin, I think, for several days, maybe up to a week, to hammer out the final details of the Constitution. And here I have the draft Constitution again. I think it's 259 the articles, a lot of articles, very detailed. And perhaps Your Excellency can, next time they have it, please have a table of the differences between this one to the one that didn't make it, and to the one from 07, and to the one from 97, so we don't have to read it over and over again. When I read it, first you think about, okay, what's the same? So a lot of the articles are just similar to the last time, the first section, for example. But then you're looking at what are the differences. So anyway, next time we hope there will be a next time. Please have a table of the differences. Now, without further ado, let's hear it from the main drafter and spokesperson of the Constitution Drafting Commission. Many issues I think people are wondering about. Than Palat Kap, we call him Than Palat, which is forever the PermSec for us. Rights, citizen rights, the representation, the role of the House, the Senate, the relationship that Ajahn Ek discussed, the independent agencies, the power and authority of the Constitutional Court and other independent agencies, the transitional interim 5 years period. What's the rationale and motivation behind this, and where would it lead? So, Than Palat Kap, the floor is yours. Many questions.
Thank you, Ajahn Thitinan, Dr. Ek, the Dean, Excellencies, friends, good morning, and happy to see you all here, and the interest in the present draft constitution we're trying to come up with. Let me say I'm happy to be back. I won't be dramatic on these hallowed grounds, but they were good, happy stomping grounds for me 44 years ago when I stepped into this university and left 40 years ago. So happy to be back and among such a distinguished group. The topic before us, the draft constitution and the referendum, principles, stakes and directions. Principles, I think, is clear. How we can bring Thailand back to democracy, away from the conflict, the confrontation and the violence, the protests in the streets, and as mentioned, how do we rid it in some way or possible of corruption. And of course, at the same time, giving the people the power to elect their own representatives. The stakes, let me say, the stakes are very high. If we succeed, then we have some time of normalcy. If we fail, I think the projection of confrontation among the groups are very high. The directions where we go from here, I think in the short term, looking at the draft, at the referendum, if it does pass, what do we do? If it doesn't pass, it is out of our hands and in the hands of the government and the hands of the National Council on Peace and Order. So I think that title of this seminar today, I think sets a good stage for our discussions. I've been told I have about 20 to 30 minutes to discuss with you. So I would like to divide that time into three separate, distinct, but interrelated issues. First is where we stand now. Second would be what has just happened a few days ago, and what next? Where do we go from here? Where we stand now is we've been drafting the Constitution since the 6th of October, non-stop, every weekday for the past few months, and we only have 13 days ahead of us before the deadline. We're supposed to present the Constitution to the government, and then they present it on to the National Election Commission. But in reality, we've set ourselves a deadline that is much earlier than that. As Dr. Thitinan was mentioning, we're having a retreat in Hua Hin again, the second set of retreats. It is just a way of concentrating, getting us all, 21 of us, to concentrate on making sure that the final output is correct. Articles don't contradict one another, and we don't make many mistakes referring to articles that don't exist or wrong articles. That has been set for 23rd to 26th of March. 27, 28 would be when we would send the final version off to the printers, as we say, and the 29th we present it to government. So in reality, we've set ourselves a deadline of around the 21st of March. So that gives us even less time. How are we doing? I think we've completed that first draft, distributed it on the 29th of January, giving people about 2.5 weeks to present their views, comments, proposal, amendments. They've done so. Government, the various Manam or rivers, as they say, the political parties and the people, the NGOs, the civil society, they have done so. We've amended it. We have studied all these amendments very seriously and carefully. What we have done is to try, as they say, you can't please everyone, but you have to please those that you feel matter. And those that we felt matter were the people, the general public, the NGOs. And that is where you would, if you read the papers, all the controversies and the concerns were expressed. Because this particular Constitution, as Dr. Thitinan was saying, the 1997 Constitution was a breaking new grounds. All these rights and freedoms were coming to the fore. Everyone was clamoring for this and that, environment, community rights, everything was included in that. Then you had the later Constitution of 2007. That, again, you had new rights and freedoms where you wanted included, you included that. So when we started drafting, we asked ourselves, shall we go that direction, that same route? That means if you think of anything else, you just add to it. We said, no, let's try to do it differently. Number one, rights and freedom of the Thai people are enshrined. If you have all the rights, any curtailments of such rights and freedom have to be written down in the Constitution in the law. Such laws have to be taking into consideration human dignity, does not impede on people's rights and not create unnecessary burden upon them. Otherwise, you have full rights. That is how we proceeded. Then we went one step further in a sense that these rights and freedoms, when it entails the entire society, rather than just putting it down as right and freedom and it's floating about in the air somewhere, we're saying, let's put it down as duty of the state. It's not the right of the state, it's not the power of the state to grant you these rights or not. It is the duty of the state. So we're taking it one step further, that we put down as duty of the state that you have to do all these things on education, on public health. And that is where we ran into problems, because every NGO, every civil society was looking and comparing, as Ajahn Thitinan was saying, at the previous constitution. And for us, it was looking more like a photo find game, that if it was there and it's not in ours, then something is wrong. That flower vase was there and it's no longer here. So something must be wrong. That's why we try to remedy it. Kun Michai, I think, gave a very excellent analogy, that we were saying in the past, if any group wanted some rights and freedoms, they had to clamor for it, they had to demand it, they had to fight for it. And that's what they did. So there is that sense of ownership. What we've done is, many of these rights and freedoms are now enshrined in law. It's not the first constitution. You now have many of these laws in place to ensure these rights and freedoms. Environment, all these laws are here. So he compared it as, that was still during the winter season. He said, people are cold, let's give them a heater. And that's what we're trying to do with this new idea of duty of the state. But then the people come and said, no, what is a heater? I'm not used to a heater. I want my old blanket back. And that's what we've been trying to do. We return the blanket to you. If you want it included, we've done that. But the other controversial issues are how you arrive at, how you elect MPs, how you select or elect senators. You will see that all the people, the most of the people that we went to talk to in every province that we went to, once you explain it to them, they are fine with it. As long as they have the right to elect the people, their representatives. The way you design it, one ballot, two ballot, it's no problem to them. It is the political parties that were clamoring and saying, this is all wrong. You are taking away the rights of the people to select their own representatives. We're saying no. They still elect their representatives. We're just trying to find another way. And that other way with the MPs is to ensure that every vote is counted. That not only those that elected the elected MPs, those people who voted for people who were not elected, those votes will be counted. But at the end of the day, any political party would still be ensured that the percentage of their votes that they receive from the people will translate into the number of MPs they have. We felt it was a more fair system. You will no longer, if that does take place, not have some region being represented by one particular party and not others. So that is what we felt was fair. Okay, that is where we stand. We are now have now completed all the discussions on all the proposed amendments. As Ajahn Thitinan was saying, we need a comparison. We do have a comparison. It just came out compiled as a book, rather than a booklet, comparing the 1997 Constitution and 07 and our present draft, which many looked at it and said it's already outdated because we already amended so many provisions to take care of all these concerns. Okay, so that's where we stand. We've completed the discussions on every chapter, and now we are on this last chapter called the reform. Previously, reform we had put under the transition provisions because we felt that, number one, there is this reform council that is looking into Sapa Kapklun Patirup. They are responsible for it. So what we did was we put a provision, one article saying, these are the important reforms we have to undertake and ... waiting for their inputs. But two issues of education and the administration of justice, particularly the reform of the police, we had two separate articles. But now the government and the National Legislative Assembly is telling us this is an important issue, please come up with a separate chapter. So that's what we're doing now, and we are in the process. So what is remaining within from today to the 21st is this remaining chapter and the transition provisions, which is always the last chapter in our Constitution. Okay, that is where we stand now. So let me say that in our view, we have taken into account all the views presented, objections, concerns, proposed amendments, proposed by the people, the members of parliament, the civil societies and NGOs. What we have not done is amend our views on the political system, the electoral system, the senators, the MPs. That remains intact. So that is where we stand now. Number two, my second point was, what is going on these past few days? You've seen it in the papers that the 4 other rivers have met. If Kun Michai was ready to participate, I'm sure they would have invited him. But he felt that he was going to be at the receiving end, so he did not want to be part of that process of what they wanted to recommend to our commission. So he opted out. He was not invited. He did not attend. The 4 rivers, as they say, met and came up with this recommendation. It was presented to us, the letter was dated 13th. We received it on Monday, this Monday. As a courtesy, we knew that they will be presenting it at a press conference, so we intentionally kept it, did not release it to the public until yesterday when the Prime Minister disclosed that he had this letter has been sent from the NCPO to us, and the details are what we would need to discuss. So at that point yesterday, we distributed the letter, and I'm sure it's been printed in all the papers and the media. So with that, as Dr. Thitinan was saying, there are several proposals. All of them have been proposed to be included in this section called transition provisions. Number one is the senators. In our draft, there will be 200 senators. They will be elected from 20 different groups in Thai society, those that are in different careers, plus people like women, people with disabilities, or it's more challenged, the new terminology used, but they will be electing among themselves these 200 representatives. The proposals that we got yesterday was that the senators, they will leave our draft B, but please include it in the transition provisions that for the first 5 years after the Constitution is promulgated, the senators will go through a selection committee, the details to be worked out. They will propose the senators who will now number 250, not 200, 250, half of the House of Representatives of 500. That is the first proposal that they are asking us to consider. Our proposal still remains in the Constitution, but for the first 5 years, this is what they are asking for. That the 250 senators will be basically selected or appointed. In addition, they're saying, can you put there that 6 will be automatically reserved for the security personnel, meaning number 1, the Permanent Secretary of Defense, the Supreme Commander, Army Commander, Navy Commander, Air Force Commander, plus the Chief of Police. The 6 will be automatically represented in the Senate by position. If one retires, his replacement is in the Senate. That is the second one. The third is the powers, that they will still have the power to seek, to call vote of confidence and to debate the government's performance. That is the proposal before us. Let me say that we have not considered these proposals. The second is the MPs. What we have proposed is a mixed system where the vote that the people put in the ballots are counted. Basically, if any candidate wins the majority of the vote in that district or constituent, they are still elected MPs, no change there. The change now is that the votes of each candidate is put together in a pool nationwide and distributed back to the parties. If you already exceeded the percentage of the votes that you received, you already have the qualified MPs, you've selected good candidates, then well and good, we won't touch it. You still have those number of MPs. But in case the districts or the constituents are very competitive, and as a result, your MPs, the numbers of MPs you receive at the constituents level are less than the percentage of the votes you have, then you are given additional, what you call in terminology, easiest way it would be the party list MPs. That's simple. That's how we're proposing to do it. We've talked to the Election Commission. They say no problem. They're ready to do it. We've talked to the people. They understand it. They're ready to try it. But now this proposal contained in the letter from the 4 rivers are saying, no, for the first 5 years, can we have a transition provision? What they're saying is, let's go back to the old system. But number 1, the people will again go to the polling booth and select their MPs. The difference now is they are proposing a different system than ours. They are saying that the districts will be bigger districts with, say, maybe 3 MPs for each district. The people will go in and be able to vote for one person only. And then you count those votes. That's what they're proposing. Again, I'm saying we have not discussed it. And the third is the issue of the Prime Minister. In our draft, we're saying, okay, we're making no changes. That party with the highest seats in the House will be the one that forms the government. But in doing so, can you let us know, let the people know who among your party members or those that you support will be nominated as possible PMs, so the people will know. Many people are asking why. It should be easy. Whoever is number 1 on the party list, or whoever is the head of the party, But again, this is Thailand. It has happened before, and I'm sure it can happen again, that the party with the highest number of votes does not submit the name of the head of the party or leader of the party, or even those among the party list, but sometimes they just pick a name. Sometimes it's not even their political party members. So only in Thailand. So we're saying, just let the people know. We're not saying you need to name 3 names. You can name 3, you can name 2, you can name 1, you can opt out. But the letter from the 4 rivers are saying, let's not use this for the first 5 years. It is a new rule that is, let me say, this is an unofficial translation I made 5 minutes ago, saying, it may not be appropriate at this time, and this is not the time to introduce new rules. That's a rough translation of what is being asked of us. So again, that is the 3rd point that is being asked to be revised and put in this transition provisions. Okay, so that is where we stand now. Let me clarify that the Commission has not discussed this. If we go by normal practice, we would probably finish up the chapter on the reform by today or tomorrow. Then next week, we'll probably head into this this chapter of transition provisions. But it is generating so much interest in Thai society among the press that it could happen that Kun Michai will want to raise it this week. That I'm not counting out that possibility. So that can happen. So I'm just letting you know that how I would look at it. 3rd would be, what next? Well, if things go according to plan, on the 29th we hand over the draft to the government. They hand it over to the National Election Commission, who is already starting all their preparations. They need time. What has happened now is, last week, the National Legislative Assembly passed an act to amend the interim constitution of BE 2557 because of a few items. Number 1, the original provision on the referendum contained some discrepancies or contradiction, because one clause said the referendum will be held among all the eligible voters, and the Constitution will pass if it receives the majority vote of the voters. Then another paragraph said it will pass if it receives the majority of the voters who cast their votes. There was a difference there of a simple majority or an absolute majority. So this provision in this interim constitution was amended to make it clearer. What passed in Parliament last week was to write it clearly that the draft constitution will be accepted if the yes vote outnumber the no votes. As simple as that. So what you're saying is, you either say yes or no. If you just came and voted and you didn't say yes or no, your ballot doesn't count. So it's making it more simple. The next one is in line with our proposal that the eligible voters in the past, when things were not so computerized, you had to be 18 on the 1st of January of any year that any election or referendum will be held. What we are saying now is everything is now computerized. You only have to be 18 on the day of the election or the referendum. And that the government agrees. So that is part of the amendment to the Constitution, basically saying that if you are 18 on the day of the referendum, whenever that is, you will be eligible. So with that, it means every passing month you are increasing the number of eligible voters by a figure of around 40,000 per month. So that is the difference. Okay, so that is the timetable. We were thinking possibly the referendum will be held on the 31st of July. Don't write that down because the National Election Commission is saying it is probably the 7th of August. 7th of August. That will be the date that the people will decide whether they like this constitution, but now with several possible amendments. And you are now already hearing the political parties saying, you add that amendment, it's going to be shot down. We will see. I'm not making any predictions. I'm not in that business. But if it passes, then what? If it passes, we're saying, give us another 8 months because we are asked to draft 10 more laws. Laws concerning elections of members of parliament, selections of senators, political party law, the laws governing the Auditor General, the Ombudsman that has been revised, the procedures of the Constitutional Tribunal, there are a total of 10. We're saying give us 8 months. That is when the issue of the possible extension of the roadmap arose. But the government is telling us, I want to stick to the roadmap. So we're saying, okay, if you want to stick to the roadmap, give us that 8 months. We will ask for 6 months to prepare all the laws necessary that you can have the elections within the time frame of 6 months. That means the political party, the MPs, the senators. The other laws that does not deal directly with the elections, the ombudsman, the whatever, we will do it later within the next following 2 months. And so that is where we stand. But if the draft does not pass the referendum, off the hook, someone else will have to do it. We will be dissolved, going the way of Professor Bawon Sak's committee and having more time to come visit Chulalongkorn. So thank you very much. I hope it gives you an idea of where we're going.